In 2011, an MIT researcher sat down with a graduate student and asked her a simple question. Would she rather talk to a person or a robot? The student didn't hesitate. She said the robot. No judgment, no unpredictability, no risk of being misunderstood. At the time, this sounded like a strange edge case. A single unusual answer from a single unusual person. 15 years later, in 2026, that strange edge case isn't strange anymore. Tens of millions of people now talk to AI companions every single day, for advice, for comfort, for company. Sometimes for something that looks a lot like love. The researcher's name was Sherry Turkle, and in this video, we're going to unpack what she actually found. Why a 100-year-old philosophical idea explains exactly why this is happening, and why the twist at the end of this story is something almost nobody wants to admit out loud. Stay until the end, because the most uncomfortable part of this isn't about AI at all. Sherry Turkle wasn't some tech-fearing outsider. She was a psychologist trained in psychoanalysis, working at MIT, the beating heart of technological optimism. For over 30 years, she studied how people relate to machines. Not in theory, in person. She sat in nursing homes and watched elderly patients talk to robotic baby seals. She sat with children who cried real tears over the death of a digital pet. And slowly, she noticed something that unsettled her deeply. People weren't just using these machines, they were falling into relationships with them. Relationships that felt real, even though only one side of the conversation actually understood anything at all. Her conclusion wasn't that machines were becoming more human. It was the opposite and much stranger. Humans were starting to expect less from each other, so they could feel comfortable expecting more from machines. Here's the pattern Turkle kept running into over and over in decades of interviews. An elderly woman who had lost a child was introduced to a robot shaped like a baby seal. It made eye contact. It responded to her voice. It seemed to comfort her, and it worked. She felt comforted, genuinely. But here's the detail that stuck with Turkle. That robot had never lost anything. It had no concept of grief, of time, of loss. It was, in her words, putting on a great show, and the woman experienced that performance as though it were real empathy. This wasn't an isolated case. Turkle found it with children and their Tamagotchis, mourning a pet that was never alive to begin with. She found it with a graduate student, telling her flat out that a robot felt like a safer conversational partner than another human being. The common thread in every single case wasn't that the machines got smarter. It was that people were lonely, and a machine that listens without judgment, without needing anything back, without the risk of rejection, starts to feel like a relief. Turkle put it simply. Technology offers the illusion of companionship without the demands of friendship, and that's the part worth sitting with. Not companionship, the illusion of it, but an illusion that feels, emotionally, almost exactly like the real thing. So, why does a machine that understands nothing manage to feel so understanding? To answer that, we have to go back almost a century to a philosopher named Martin Buber and one of the most quietly influential ideas in modern philosophy. The difference between what he called I-thou and I-it. Buber argued that every relationship we have falls into one of these two modes. An I-it relationship is what we have with objects, a tool, a calculator, a vending machine. In this mode, the other thing exists to serve a purpose. It has no independent reality of its own as far as we're concerned. We use it, we control it, and when we're done, we walk away. There's no real mutual encounter, just one side acting and the other side simply reacting. An I-thou relationship is completely different. It's what happens in a real encounter between two people who fully show up to each other. Neither person is a tool for the other. Neither can be fully predicted, fully controlled, or fully explained. There's risk in it. The other person might disagree, might misunderstand you, might reject you. But that same risk is exactly what makes the connection real. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. An AI companion, by definition, can only ever be an I-it relationship, no matter how convincing it feels. It has no independent will. It cannot truly disagree with you in a way that matters. It exists entirely to respond to you, shaped by you, controlled by you. But because it's designed so well, warm tone, personalized responses, endless patience, it simulates the feeling of an I-thou encounter almost perfectly. You get the emotional sensation of being deeply understood, without any of the risk that real understanding requires. And once you understand that gap between a real thou and a very convincing it, you can suddenly see Turkle's decades of research from a completely different angle. She wasn't just documenting people's attachment to machines. She was documenting an entire culture quietly trading I-thou relationships for safer, more convenient I-it ones, and mistaking the second for the first. Turkle's most unsettling finding wasn't about the machines at all. It was about what happens to us afterward. She observed that once people get comfortable with a relationship that asks nothing of them, gives no resistance, and never disappoints, they start expecting the same thing from actual human relationships. Real people, unlike machines, have their own moods, their own needs, their own inconvenient truths. They interrupt you, they disagree, they have bad days that have nothing to do with you. Turkle's fear was that as we get used to relationships without friction, we quietly lower what we expect from the messy, complicated, sometimes disappointing people in our actual lives, and start treating a difficult conversation with a human as a problem to be avoided, instead of a normal part of being close to someone. In other words, the danger was never that machines would become more human. It's that humans would start relating to each other like machines, expecting predictability, expecting convenience, expecting to be able to walk away the second something feels difficult. Here's the part of this story that should genuinely unsettle you. Turkle's research on people preferring robots to humans came out of interviews from the 2000s and early 2010s, a time when sociable robots were still clunky lab prototypes. Her warning was about baby seals and Tamagotchis. Now look at 2026. AI companion apps aren't clunky prototypes anymore. They speak fluently, remember your past conversations, adjust their personality to match what makes you comfortable, and are available at 3 a.m. when no human in your life is awake to answer. We're living through a genuine, well-documented rise in a global loneliness epidemic, happening at the exact same moment that AI companionship has become good enough to feel emotionally convincing. And this is where Buber's philosophy stops being an abstract 100-year-old idea and starts reading like a direct warning about right now. An I-it relationship, dressed up convincingly enough, doesn't just fail to satisfy loneliness, it can quietly train us to expect less from real people, exactly like Turkle predicted, except now at a scale of tens of millions of daily users instead of a handful of nursing home residents. And here's the twist that almost nobody wants to say out loud. The people using AI companions aren't broken or naive or making some obvious mistake. Most of them are doing something completely reasonable, looking for connection in a world that has made real, effortful, risk-taking human connection harder and harder to find. The tragedy isn't that people are choosing machines. It's that the choice started to feel necessary in the first place. Turkle wasn't warning us that robots would trick us. She was warning us that we'd let them. Because by then, loneliness would have made the offer too good to refuse. Turkle never argued that we should abandon technology or that AI companionship is inherently evil. Her point was more careful and honestly, more useful. Know exactly what you're getting and what you're not. An AI companion can be a genuinely helpful tool for practicing a hard conversation, for company during a rough night, for support when literally nothing else is available. Buber's own framework doesn't say I-it relationships are bad. Tools are supposed to be tools. The danger only shows up when we forget the difference. When we start mistaking a very good it for a real thou, and let that substitute quietly replace our tolerance for real, complicated, sometimes difficult human connection. Maybe the real takeaway from all of this isn't a warning about machines at all. Maybe it's a quiet invitation to notice the risky, inconvenient, sometimes disappointing people in your own life, and choose them anyway on purpose, precisely because they can surprise you. If this video changed how you think about your own relationship with technology, hit the like button, and tell me in the comments, have you noticed yourself expecting less from people and more from your apps? Subscribe for more deep dives into the ideas quietly shaping how we think, feel, and connect in 2026. See you in the next one.